Hi, I'm Jack Howell. This video is about the 3-week European tour from which the Pittsburgh Symphony just returned. As a travel video, it's probably going to suck. But I thought it might be worthwhile, maybe of interest to some, to talk about touring. You know, you might have questions. What's it like? How it works? So let's start with the obvious question, which is, why tour at all? There was a time when orchestras toured to make money. When I first came to Pittsburgh in 1996, there were 2 tours a year, usually one overseas and one domestic. The number and duration of tours was basically limited by what the orchestra would put up with. The contractual 3-week limit was established in the 1980s because tours used to be much longer. That's not the case anymore, at least not for us. The cost of touring exceeds what presenters pay, and the PSO depends on sponsors and a special endowment created by the Hillman Foundation to support touring. And we generally tour every other year. So if it's that expensive, why tour at all? It's kind of simple. The PSO goes on tour for the same reason that Ferrari goes racing. It improves the breed. It gives the world a measure of us, and it gives us a measure of ourselves. We are an orchestra that tours and records. That's what we are. And whatever it costs in money to tour, it would cost us more in quality and morale and status to stop. For video interest, I'm starting you at one of the really beautiful parts of tour, which was the bus ride from Innsbruck, Austria to Bolzano, Italy. This was kind of a good news, bad news sort of a day. We had a 4-hour train from Vienna to Innsbruck and then a 3-hour bus ride. But the scenery through the Tyrolean Alps was spectacular, which illustrates, I suppose, what tour is like kind of depends on you. If you're healthy and happy, it's a beautiful day, even if it's a long sit. If you're sick and miserable, well, screw the scenery. It's just a long day in the saddle. And of course, some players were sick and miserable. Every tour is about illness, or doing your best to avoid it. 3 weeks is enough time to be well, get sick, and recover. And you've got to do all of that while you're on the move. Everyone is cooped up together in planes, on buses or trains, so things tend to go around. Winter tours are naturally the worst, and summer festival tours are generally better, but this year was the COVID tour. We toured in 2022 and almost nobody got COVID because we were really careful, and Europe was still being really careful. But this year we were in a weird spot where COVID is still a thing. It still got some people really sick, but most cases were mild and the general attitude was, whatever. I think in the end we had over 20 players who missed concerts due to COVID, but nobody was hospitalized. We do bring doctors on tour. One doctor covered the first half and another doctor covered the second half. Both doctors got COVID. I think Dallas maybe has the current record for the most cases in a tour, but we didn't test unless someone was symptomatic. And some who had mild symptoms may not have tested. And I think some orchestras who were on tour didn't test at all. And I've heard that maybe half of the orchestra might have been sick with COVID, but we'll never know. I think a lot of the issue with COVID on our tour was leftover resonance from the fear and division of the pandemic proper. If you notice a bus with the PSO sign upside down, that's the mask mandatory bus. Fear and division in today's world, who would have thought? The good news is I stayed healthy for the whole tour, which has almost never happened before. The bad news is, as I was pulling my clarinet bag with the Lomax triple case out of an overhead rack, somehow it slipped and tumbled down and the handle strap twisted around my right pinky and tore a ligament. Right before our stretch of 7 concerts in 8 days. Good times. I thought it was just sore until an orthopedic surgeon friend came to our concert in Cologne and examined it. 6 to 8 weeks to heal, 2 to 3 months to stop hurting. Have to self-splint when I'm not playing. And yes, playing hurt. It still hurts, but it's just pain, and it's just a pinky. I've had colleagues playing with cancer, so playing with a hurt finger isn't heroic. It's just an example of the kind of thing that happens, and you have to deal with it, especially on tour. The most important thing about a tour is the concerts, but it's easy to forget that because a concert takes 2.5 hours, while everything else takes the remaining 21.5 hours. This was kind of an unusual tour in that we didn't go to several of my favorite halls or cities. We played in Vienna, but in the concert house, not the Musikverein. And the Musikverein might be my favorite hall in the world. The Berlin Philharmonie and the Concertgebouw are 2 other great halls we missed. We were the only American orchestra invited to play the Salzburg Festival, so we're told, which was important, but it happened to be the first concert of the tour because concerts that had been scheduled in Ljubljana and Florence fell through. Our other tour cities included Dortmund, Düsseldorf, Wiesbaden, Murano, Cologne, Grafenegg, Hamburg. I guess there's no such thing as a bad tour, but the fact that we didn't go to Paris or Lucerne or Berlin or Amsterdam or the Proms really made Hamburg stand out. And I'm getting ahead of myself. We'll come back to Hamburg. But it's kind of all about the halls. Orchestra musicians really key in on the hall. And a lot of tour is experiencing and dealing with the different acoustic environments and stage setups. We started in Salzburg, like I said. If we had to hit the ground running, at least we got that one in before everyone got COVID. Actually, because of the cancellations, we started out parked for 2 days in Munich, which is remarkable mostly because I ran into one of my guitar heroes, Paul Gilbert, on the street. Mr. Big, Racer X, fantastic player, he couldn't have been nicer. I didn't take any pictures in Salzburg because the idea of making a video had not yet occurred to me. Our next concert was in Grafenegg, which is about an hour from Vienna. It's a great festival and a great venue, but not exactly a hall. Our principal flutist, Lorna McGee, was out with COVID for Grafenegg and also for the next concert in Murano. That meant that our guest associate, Kayla Burgraff from Toronto, had to sight read the concert, which she did brilliantly. It just makes the point that you have to look at the depth chart when you're on tour. Flutist Teresa Prems from Innsbruck also joined us for 2 concerts. At one point, 3 PSO horn players were out sick, and we had subs from Vienna, and for at least one work, all 4 horns were playing different parts than they had prepared. Then we played a concert in Murano, Italy. We stayed in nearby Bolzano because Murano was a late addition to try and patch up the aforementioned Ljubljana and Florence-sized hole. And hotel space in Murano wasn't available. Murano was a rather small hall, which was less a problem for people capacity than for acoustic capacity. A lot of European halls just can't take the volume our brass section produces, which is as far as I am going to open that can of worms. But maybe this is a good time to talk about how a tour is put together. There are 3 main entities involved. So in Europe, there are a bunch of festivals and presenters that bring in touring orchestras. What dates they have available, what they want us to play, and what they are willing to pay, and how soon we have to commit is a lava lamp of factors that is handled by a European booking company called Hans Ulrich Schmidt in conjunction with the PSO. Our artistic department handles the repertoire. Our executive department decides what we can afford. The logistics of the tour, all the transportation and hotels, is handled by a highly specialized travel agent called Trav Tours, who handles most touring orchestras. Guido Frackers is the president and is with us most of the time. He has several associates, and they're all very professional and capable, multilingual, streetwise, and if something goes wrong, they handle it. Our instruments are handled by our stage crew from Pittsburgh. They do a great job. They travel with our instruments, literally with our instruments, in the cargo plane to Europe and back, sometimes with the cargo trucks between cities. The crew is still in Europe right now because it takes days for our instruments packed in the carnet to be checked and to clear customs. The air tag says my clarinets are in Luxembourg Airport right now, so that's where the stage crew is. Every instrument has its own flight case, and our crew either performs or oversees all the loading and stowage and security. Same with our concert clothes. Those go in special wardrobe trunks that travel in the cargo trucks. Okay, back to tour. After Murano, we played concerts in Dortmund, which is really a nice hall. It's modern and plain, but it sounds great, and a run out to Dusseldorf, where I tore up my pinky. Here's the Dusseldorf Hall. It used to be a planetarium, which isn't acoustically ideal, but it looks cool. Usually it's the last concert of the tour and we fly out of Frankfurt the next morning, so it's familiar, but also a little weird to play there and still have half the tour left. Then we took the train from Dortmund to Hamburg. Maybe this is a good time to talk about transport between cities. How we get from one city to another is ultimately decided by contract. And the way the dates lay out, a lot of times we have to go from one side of the country to the other, rather than going in a straight line from one adjacent city to the other. On a day that we travel and play, our contract says that we may only travel 4.5 hours, and we must be at the hotel 3 hours before the concert. Now, that doesn't always happen. One year, I think it was 2017, we got stuck in Lucerne with plane trouble and had to go straight from the Bucharest airport to the concert hall with a police escort. We started the concert a half hour late. That was a little stressful at the time, but the story is totally worth it. So the logistical question is, what mode of transport gets the orchestra to the next city both economically and contractually? Buses are excellent. The European Mercedes and Setra buses are comfortable and powerful, maybe the cheapest and certainly the most convenient transport with door-to-door service, but if the distance is too great, they're not contractual. The worst travel day actually is flying. A flight means that you have to get on a bus, schlep to the airport, get herded through security and maybe passport control, and then wait for the plane, which may or may not be on time. If it's a charter, it's pretty smooth after that, but if it's a commercial flight, you have to deal with boarding and gate agents and other passengers who aren't always cool with instruments and overhead bins. Then you have to bus to the hotel, which isn't bad when the buses meet you on the tarmac, but still it's another schlep. Trains are better than flying, and sometimes better than bus. Sometimes the whole hotel is walking distance from the train station. The trains are fast and smooth. Not quite what they used to be in Germany in terms of reliability, but on this tour everything worked out. So here we are in Hamburg. Hamburg has always been a good tour stop, even before the Elbphilharmonie, but this tour it was the jewel. We stayed at the Westin in the Elbphilharmonie, which is really splendid. If you're wondering where we stay on tour, it depends, but there's contract language. The hotel has to be close to the hall or the city center, it has to have nearby dining, and it has to be of a certain quality. Whether or not a hotel is contractual is determined by an advance visit by management along with a member of our tour committee. If you want an example of a hotel that is 100% contractual, look no further than the Elbphilharmonie Westin. I think I walked about 5 miles a day in Hamburg. Absolutely lovely walks along the waterfront. Impossible to get lost because the Elbphilharmonie is visible from everywhere. If you're wondering what we eat on tour, it starts with a hotel breakfast. Most good European hotels offer a breakfast, which is included by contract in our rooms. I'm just showing you the Hamburg one because it was far and away the best. It's really a spread. There's sections that cater to just about every nationality. You might be tempted to make a sandwich for lunch, but don't. It's bad manners, and that's what per diem is for. Speaking of per diem, it's enough to eat pretty well. I mean, not Michelin restaurants every night, but usually the foodies in the orchestra save up and plan a special meal or two. Food is an individual thing. Some players are more adventurous than others. Europe is generally pretty safe for food and water, but I feel I owe it to my colleagues to be conservative, and I generally stick to hot dishes. When a group of players goes out for oysters or steak tartare and they all get sick, it becomes legendary, not in a good way. I've been thinking about making a video just about the Elbphilharmonie as a hall. I don't know that I've played anywhere quite like it. Most halls have a sound, have a color. The Elbphilharmonie is transparent and colorless, but you can hear everything and everyone, and you can hear yourself. It will not flatter you, but neither will it steal from you. It is neither reverberant nor dry. It cannot be overpowered, though Lord knows our brass section tried. Where the Musikverein supports and colors soft dynamics beautifully but is kind of blown apart by the brass, the Elbphilharmonie simply transmits what you do directly to the audience, accurately and without comment. There is no such thing as too loud or too soft. I think it's a fascinating hall, and I can't wait to go back. After Hamburg, it was Cologne, Wiesbaden, Vienna, bang, 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 and then home. Here's some more videos of those halls while I editorialize. I wish everyone would travel. There's so much to be learned by being a foreigner that you just should. And seeing how other countries and cultures do things for better or worse. If you're willing to learn, of course. In the end, I think the best thing about touring is being part of an orchestra that tours. It makes us tighter in more ways than one. There's a band of brothers and sisters feeling to the preparation, the travel, the performances, the emergencies, the jokes. Many of the stories that live on in PSO oral history come from tour. Like there was the time where a backstage pre-concert dinner gave everyone food poisoning. There's the trombonist who left his vintage Kahn in a taxi in Amsterdam, never to be seen again. The time our charter flight made an emergency landing because a violinist had acute pericarditis. The time luggage was picked up from the hotel rooms after a concert and sent ahead by truck, and a bass player had packed his pants. The tour is 3 weeks of being in an alternate reality where what you do is actually the most important thing to everyone you deal with. Then you come home and adjust all the things that happened while you were gone, like the lawn. Go get 'em.